This podcast brought to you by Ring. With Ring cameras, you can check on your pets to catch them in the act.
Izzy, drop that.
Or just keep them company.
Aw, I'll be home soon.
Make sure they're okay while you're away. With Ring. Learn more at ring.com/pets.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Dr. Psych Mom Show. Today, I'm going to be doing a book review, which I don't usually do. I've done a few as posts. I obviously talk about books a great deal, but I've never devoted the entirety of one of these extremely long episodes, just kidding, to one book. And so the book I'm going to be discussing is Die with Zero by Bill Perkins, and I'll tell you why I think it's interesting, especially for clients that are grappling with their existential, life decisions coming up to midlife, which is a great majority of my clients are in the midlife bucket and are trying to make sense of how to play it, right? I mean, what's the play? You want to live your life as best you can, and you've started to realize it's not infinite in a very, very visceral way. And so I will talk about that as soon as I tell you to subscribe. You are missing out on a quarter of my episodes if you do not subscribe for $8.99 a month. I am confident that it is the cheapest way for you to possibly learn more about yourself psychologically. I would say that, I really would put my money where my mouth is there, or your money. And I mean, for the amount that I talk, which is quick, these are very dense. The amount of content that's packed into one of these episodes, you know why? It's because I don't have the guests. I've still failed to ever listen to an entire podcast, even my own, from beginning to end. And it's the guests. Like, I put on a podcast, I expect that maybe it's going to move quickly-ish so that I can pay attention. By the time they get the guest in, and then you stop talking because it's just normal. Like, there's silence on one end and the other one talks. Then they have to do small talk and it's got to be socially appropriate. By the time anybody says anything of value, I don't even know. It's already 15 minutes. I do not have that much life, which is relevant, of course, to what we're talking about today. So anyway, subscribe. Bill Perkins is a hedge fund guy, I think. I mean, don't quote me on this. Made, it seems, hundreds of millions of dollars. And he wrote this book. And so a lot of guys will read it just because of the cred, of that he made a whole bunch of money. And then, you're going to listen to him talk about money if he made a whole bunch of money. And I was, in fact, recommended it by a client. When clients really recommend something, I try to read it if possible. I can't read everything, but I read some of them. And so basically what this guy says is the goal is to die with no money in the bank. And if you want to give money away or give money to your kids, you do it while you're still alive. And if you think that you're going to need all this money for later life, you're probably wrong, because people, as they age, and now you see why I like it, right? Because he speaks frankly about the realities of aging, you're not going to use it. You're not going to use all the money that you think you are, and so then he does some calculations, and it's like people end up working like 2 years for like 1 week at the end of their life to be extended in a long-term nursing facility or something. And you got to read the book for he does a lot of this math about, to prove his point. And so if you're into that, then you like his book. He has a website. He's got charts. I can't get through any of that. But philosophically, I agree. Money decreases in utility. This is his prime, this is the prime tenet of the whole book. Money decreases in utility with age most of the time. Except I thought it was funny. He had an example where he said Vegas is better in your 40s than your 30s. I've never even been to Vegas, so I'll take his word for it. But his point is basically, he had a couple of good examples, which I'll share with you. The first is when he said he made his first $1 million. He gave his grandmother $10,000 or something, and then she bought him a $50 sweater, and she put the rest in the bank. And that was interesting to him, and it was surprising to him. And then he realized, what else is she going to really do with the money? She doesn't do anything anymore, She doesn't go out. She watches TV. She does what she does. She doesn't need that money. But if she had been younger, then she could have really enjoyed that money. She could have gone on a trip. She could have done something with it. So, and then he talks about other things as well. Like he was a trader and he was like trying to save money. And then one of the older guys that mentored him said, that's stupid. You're going to make so much money in the course of your life. Why are you saving and like only eating like less than you're hungry for now when you have so little money? And what are you saving? Like 50% of your money or 10%, whatever it was. You shouldn't be saving any percent of your money because you don't have enough money to save and you're going to make more money over time, right? And so that was a big epiphany for him. And then also this idea that you just don't enjoy money the same way when you are too old to enjoy the activities. So there's people that are, you enjoy going out to eat, getting a lot of clothes, being very materialistic in your 20s and your 30s more than in your 40s and your 50s, which is true. So many of the observations concord with the things I see every day in my practice. In your 40s and 50s, most people are like, fuck it, I don't want any more things. Get these things out of my house. I'm purging. I don't care. Women don't like shopping for clothes as much because you don't even like your body as much. It's just like a body at that point. It's not like this new exciting body, It's like the same body you've had for all these years. Things don't even fit like they used to. It's not like who likes a shopping trip more? A teenage girl or a 40-year-old woman? A teenage girl. I took my daughters to go shopping and they're both young teenagers and they were so grateful and appreciative to buy these clothes. I went into most of the stores and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'll get something, or not, we go into a store and if not, I won't buy something. It's like not a big deal. But it reminded me of when I had been that age, getting new clothes is transformative. If you're going to give a 14-year-old girl $100 to go to a clothing store, she's so happy. For me, it's like, okay, all right, I guess I'll get some clothes. Or I won't, and I'll just save it. And I don't even know what I'm saving it for. I'm just putting it in the bank because who cares? And so, and he talked about it and it made a lot of sense. So anyway, when he was a young trader, he also said that a guy decided to take a summer off and he himself was too anxious to take a summer off. So he stayed at his job because he didn't want to lose his job if he were to take a summer to travel. And this guy did it and he had all these amazing experiences. He slept with women. He danced till dawn. He went to Ibiza, whatever, And so he wishes that he had done it because whenever do you get to be 22 years old in Europe with no strings attached, whatever. And he's right, And so it's very interesting to think about how much of your money are you hoarding and socking away. And meanwhile, you'll never be as young as you are today. Whatever day, whatever age you are listening to this, you'll never be as young as you are right now. And so and there's all these billionaires who've pledged to give their money away while they're alive and all of this sort of thing. And so basically, he has his finger on the pulse of like kind of how people are maybe changing how they think about wealth. But it's so interesting philosophically as well because it's true. I see many, many people who are not happy in their careers and they're not happy with the status quo of their lives and they're not happy with the structure of their lives. And every day feels stressful and feels like, like something you don't really want to do. And then when is it going to be different? Then when you get older. And this is always very salient for people who have lost a parent, like to cancer or something in their 60s or something, because there's a lot of people who have a big epiphany when their parent was always waiting for retirement. They would talk about it all the time. They're going to move to Florida or they're going to travel or this or that, and then they die from cancer. And that's before. So what happened is that they worked their whole life. Then they say they're going to retire and then they get cancer. And it's terrible. It's very tragic. And when that happens to people with their parents, sometimes it can, create the sort of epiphany, but that the book is trying to create in people as well, which is you only have now. And he also had an interesting statistic that most people get their inheritance when they're 60, and at 60, because their parents are dying when they're around 80. And at 60, you don't need it. A lot of people most people, everybody has already raised their kids, right? And that's when you needed the extra money to have like the bigger house or to do something with your children or to get yourself going. And he has an example of a woman who had been living, paycheck to paycheck and struggling a lot. And then her parents ended up giving her an inheritance of like something, $1 million when she was 60. That money, wherever it was, even though it grew over time, wherever it was at, as it was growing, would have helped her so much when she was younger versus now. So it can really, it's an interesting book. It's a quick read, and it can really make you think about what your priorities are, and are you living in accordance with your values, which, as you know, if you listen to this podcast, I say all the time, and that's something out of acceptance and commitment therapy, is always, are you living in accordance with your values? So are you hoarding money for like one day that may never come? And are you doing things out of anxiety because you need X amount of dollars in the bank so that you don't feel anxious versus spending, let's say, on a trip with your kids or on not working as much or on retiring earlier when you were younger or whatever the case may be? And I think that there are a couple things that are interesting psychologically that he doesn't include. He's obviously a super big extrovert. I mean, like the numbers, he talked about having a party when he was 45 and he invited everybody and rented out all this stuff. Obviously, he has more money than like anybody, but, certainly more than the average person. But so, there's an equivalent thing that people could do without renting out a Caribbean island. But a lot of people who are introverted don't want to do that. So for a lot of people, like if they were to win the lottery, they would get anxious. It's like, wait, am I expected to like do a whole bunch of shit now that I don't want to do? Am I expected to be a different kind of person that travels, that like does all these things that I don't really want to do? So there is that. Like the idea of having like a stable life is very appealing, to some people who are less extroverted and who are more sensitive and who find it to be very nerve-wracking to think, man, if I didn't think about saving in the same way and I wanted to spend instead, then I would be forced kind of into doing all these other things that I don't really want to do. So there is that point. People who are more anxious would find this to be an anxiety-provoking philosophy, but still there are ways that you could move it in the direction of whatever you need. So if you're an introverted person, you probably don't love going to work either, that much. And so maybe you could retire sooner or whatever. Then there's the point where obviously the man still works, right? So a lot of his thing is you need to work as long as you do, but he loves what he does and he loves writing the book and he likes, for example, me, like I'm a psychologist. I love to be a psychologist, so I wouldn't just not be a psychologist if I won the lottery. But there's ways for you to think about your career. Are you taking off enough time? Are you doing what you really want to do in your career? Or is a lot of it just shit work and busy work? Basically what he's saying is, are there ways that you could reimagine your life? Knowing and accepting that it is finite and that the last 10, 20 years are not what you think they are. And people think about retirement like, oh, I'm going to retire at 60 and then I have like 30 good years. No, most people don't have 30 good years. Things go down quickly. You never know when a health problem will start. And at the end of life, which isn't just 1 year, it's a bunch of years, people just don't do that much. They just don't. And my daughter volunteers in a home for the elderly, which is something I used to do when I was younger too. And it changes how you think, you see all these people and you're like, well, man, if they were saving up a bunch of money to live here, some of them don't know where they are. And it's not like, it's not fully the life that nobody thinks about themselves being in that situation in real life. Like you think, oh, maybe, but you don't really think, definitely wherever I am, whether it's this home for the elderly or it's, maybe living with my kids or maybe I'll be with a home health aide, it's not going to be most likely what I think. Most people are not as physically strong as they think they will be. They no longer have the response to novelty and adventure that they think they will have. Many people don't travel the way that they think that they're going to travel. So then if you're waiting and waiting to travel and you're somebody who really wants to travel, then you get to 50, 60, that's when a health issue can kick in and you won't be traveling after all. So it's kind of a seize the day philosophy that is really useful for people who struggle with anxiety and for people who were raised in homes that were very anxious and negative and focused on the worst case scenario all the time. Instead, think about the reality. It's still focusing on the worst case scenario, so it's still in your wheelhouse, right? I mean, you're going to die, right? That should be, that's a worst case scenario and it's going to happen. And trying to think about it clearly and thinking about weighing the relative merits of fully living your life versus safety and anxiety reduction. So, I do think it's very interesting. You guys should read it. It's a real good one to discuss with a partner. Nobody's going to get offended. It's not like, the other books I recommend, like Children of the Self-Absorbed, And I think that everybody could benefit in some way from the perspective shift that it gives. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you do get the book. Unfortunately for me, I get nothing if you do buy the book because it's not exactly like Bill Perkins and I are hanging out in St. John's or whatever. But St. John's is a university where I'm from. But anyway, I do think that it is a very good book, and philosophically, it can be an inflection point for you to maybe think about life a little bit differently. And as always, with more acceptance that age is not just a number, and age comes for everybody, and people and people really regret not having understood that when they get to that point. All right, guys, have a great day. Bye-bye.